What if your entire life, your job, your home, your money was ripped away, all because two rich old men made a $1 bet? That's the twisted, hilarious setup behind Trading Places, the 1983 classic where Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd flipped society upside down and proved comedy could outsmart Wall Street. But behind those laughs, there's a wild story of near-death accidents, secret cameos, and a real-life law that exists today because of this movie. So grab your briefcase and your sense of humor, because here are 20 jaw-dropping facts you probably never knew about Trading Places. Let's saddle up.
Number 1.
This entire movie was born because two writers got mad during a tennis match. Screenwriter Timothy Harris was playing doubles with two rich, hyper-competitive brothers who wouldn't stop trash-talking. After one particularly smug serve, he joked, "These guys would probably ruin someone's life just to win a bet." That joke became the spark. He teamed up with Herschel Weingrod, and together they wrote a story where two powerful men actually do that, swapping the lives of a street hustler and a stockbroker just to see what happens. From a tennis court to a Wall Street comedy classic, not bad for one bad serve.
Number 2.
To make their movie feel authentic, Harris and Weingrod didn't just guess how trading worked, they lived it. They spent days inside the real New York Commodities Exchange, watching traders scream and gamble fortunes in seconds. But the real stories came after hours, in bars filled with half-drunk brokers bragging about wins and whining about losses. Those late-night conversations became the DNA of the movie, the slang, the chaos, the swagger, all real. And speaking of smart trades, you know the deal. If you're still watching, hit that like and subscribe button. You help us keep digging up movie gold like this one.
Number 3.
Before Murphy and Aykroyd made it legendary, Trading Places was meant for another iconic duo, Richard Pryor and Gene Wilder. They'd already struck comedy lightning with Stir Crazy and Silver Streak, and the studio saw dollar signs. The project even had a working title, Black and White. But when Pryor was badly injured in a fire, production halted, and the script gathered dust. A few years later, a young Eddie Murphy was exploding on Saturday Night Live. The studio gave him a shot, paired him with Dan Aykroyd, and history was made. Sometimes the best casting choice is the one fate makes for you. 4. When Paramount first suggested Eddie Murphy for the role of Billy Ray Valentine, Landis was puzzled. "Who's Eddie Murphy?" he asked. It sounds crazy now, but in 1982, Murphy was still best known for Saturday Night Live skits. His first movie, 48 Hours, hadn't even hit theaters yet. But studio execs had seen early screenings and knew he was about to explode. Landis took a chance, and he paid off big time. Murphy's lightning-fast wit and natural charm became the film's beating heart. He could improvise entire exchanges that had the crew in stitches, and yet he never lost the emotional core of the character. That's how a 22-year-old comedian went from late-night TV to A-list movie star almost overnight.
Number 5.
The role of Mortimer Duke almost never went to the man who played him. Initially, the part was offered to Ray Milland, the Oscar-winning actor from Dial M for Murder. But Milland failed his physical insurance, forcing Landis to search for another veteran performer. Someone suggested Don Ameche, an actor who hadn't been seen in Hollywood for over a decade. Landis reportedly asked, half joking, "Wait, isn't he dead?" Fortunately, he wasn't. When producers finally located him, Ameche was hesitant until the studio matched the salary Milland had been promised. Once he joined, the chemistry between him and Ralph Bellamy, as Randolph Duke, was instant. Ameche's comeback didn't stop there. 2 years later, he starred in Cocoon and won an Oscar for Best Supporting Actor. Not bad for someone Hollywood thought was gone for good.
Number 6.
One of the biggest reasons Trading Places works so well is the chemistry between its cast. But funny enough, when filming began, most of them had no clue who the others were. The veteran duo, Ralph Bellamy and Don Ameche, were living Hollywood legends. They'd been acting since the 1930s, long before Eddie Murphy or Dan Aykroyd were even born. But when they showed up on set, they had no idea who these young comedians were. Likewise, Murphy and Aykroyd, being part of the new wave of 80s comedy, had barely heard of the older actors' classic films. You'd expect that kind of generation gap to cause friction, right? But instead, it broke the ice. Everyone came in fresh, free from expectations, and that gave the movie its unique spark. The result? A perfect mix of old-school class and new-school chaos that made the Duke brothers versus Billy Ray and Winthorpe dynamic pure gold. Sometimes ignorance really is bliss.
Number 7.
By the early 80s, Jamie Lee Curtis was known as Hollywood's Scream Queen. After Halloween, 1978, The Fog, Prom Night, and Terror Train, studios only saw her as the girl who runs from monsters. So when John Landis wanted to cast her as Ophelia, a street-smart woman who helps Aykroyd's character get back on his feet, the studio pushed back hard. They didn't believe Curtis could pull off the humor or the emotional depth. They thought she was just the horror movie girl. But Landis stood his ground, and Curtis proved everyone wrong. She delivered charm, toughness, and genuine warmth that made Ophelia unforgettable. A character who could go toe-to-toe with Eddie Murphy's charisma and not fade into the background. Critics raved about her performance, and fans fell in love with her all over again. Trading Places didn't just change her image. It set her on a path to a legendary career that would later include True Lies, Freaky Friday, and Everything Everywhere All at Once. Talk about trading places, from horror heroine to Hollywood royalty.
Number 8.
Now, here's a wild one. The shady character Clarence Beeks, the Duke brothers' inside man, was played brilliantly by Paul Gleason. But before he got the role, John Landis had someone else in mind, G. Gordon Liddy. Yes, that G. Gordon Liddy, the former FBI agent and key figure in the Watergate scandal that shook American politics in the 1970s. Landis thought the idea of casting a real-life conspirator as a shady corporate spy was too good to resist. Amazingly, Liddy actually considered it. He said he'd do it if the money was right. In the end, cooler heads prevailed, and Paul Gleason took the part. And honestly, it was the right call. Gleason nailed the sleazy confidence of Beeks, adding that perfect layer of menace beneath the comedy. Still, imagine if a real Watergate criminal had ended up in one of the most beloved comedies of the 80s. That would have been next-level meta.
Number 9.
While filming in New York City, Jamie Lee Curtis was living the dream, literally. At the time, she was engaged to J. Michael Riva, the film's production designer and the grandson of legendary Hollywood icon Marlene Dietrich. That family connection gave Curtis the chance to stay in Dietrich's luxurious Park Avenue apartment, right at 993 Park Avenue. Imagine that. During the day, Curtis was playing a struggling street-smart woman on screen, and at night she was coming home to a marble-floored, chandelier-lit Manhattan palace that once belonged to one of cinema's greatest stars. It's the perfect example of how behind-the-scenes life can completely flip from what you see on screen. A real-life Trading Places moment if there ever was one.
Number 10.
One of the fun things about Trading Places is spotting all the surprise faces that pop up for just a few seconds. Here's a list of the blink and you'll miss it cameos. Bo Diddley, the rock legend himself, shows up as the pawn shop owner. Jim Belushi hides under that ridiculous gorilla costume. Comedy duo Al Franken and Tom Davis play the two bumbling baggage handlers. Frank Oz, who voices Yoda and Miss Piggy, appears as the straight-faced police officer during Winthorpe's arrest. Even Jamie Lee Curtis's sister, Kelly Curtis, pops up as a background character named Muffy. Each cameo adds a bit of Easter egg charm, especially for fans watching decades later. And knowing that Yoda, a rock legend, and a future senator were all in the same movie, that's the kind of trivia that keeps fans coming back for rewatch after rewatch.
Number 11.
When the production moved to Philadelphia to film inside the Commodities Exchange, the crew quickly realized they weren't just borrowing a set. They were stepping onto a real trading floor where trillions of dollars moved every single day. The traders were skeptical. Hollywood actors and cameras in their space? They thought it was a joke. But once they learned what the film was about, a hilarious send-up of their high-stakes world, they embraced it. Still, filming wasn't easy. To shoot the movie's chaotic climax, the orange juice future scene, the exchange had to halt all trading for several hours. That's right, a real $6 billion a day marketplace completely stopped so Eddie Murphy could yell, "Sell! Sell!" We camera. To keep the energy authentic, Landis used real traders as extras. Their manic shouting and hand gestures were genuine, not rehearsed. When you watch that final sequence, you're seeing real financial professionals pretending to trade and secretly loving every minute of it. For a few hours, Hollywood literally took over Wall Street, and everyone walked away richer, at least in laughs.
Number 12.
Ah yes, the legendary gorilla costume scene on the train, one of the most unforgettable sequences in comedy history. What most people don't know is that filming it was absolute chaos. The suit worn by the fake gorilla, played by actor Paul Barrett, was unbearably hot and weighed nearly 80 pounds. Between takes, the poor guy had to be fanned off and given water constantly. Meanwhile, Jim Belushi, who played the drunk in the other gorilla costume, could barely see out of the mask. He kept bumping into walls and missing his marks. The infamous moment where Paul Gleason's character Beaks ends up trapped inside the costume with the real gorilla? That took multiple takes because the costume zipper kept breaking. Even Eddie Murphy joked later that the scene smelled like a zoo. But all that effort paid off. It became one of the most talked about and bizarrely beloved moments in 1980s cinema.
Number 13.
Most comedies in the 80s were filmed on Hollywood backlots, but Trading Places proudly showed off real Philadelphia. From the Duke and Duke building, actually the Fidelity Bank building on Walnut Street, to Winthorpe's townhouse in Rittenhouse Square, Landis made sure the city itself became a character. He even cast dozens of real premises as extras. That's why the film feels so authentic. It's not polished like New York or LA. It's gritty, historic, and alive. The city loved it too. Every year, fans still visit those iconic filming locations. And in 2005, Philadelphia declared December 1st Trading Places Day in honor of the film's cultural legacy. So next time you walk through Philly's old financial district, remember, you're walking through comedy history.
Number 14.
Here's a fun twist that's stranger than fiction. In the movie's finale, Murphy and Aykroyd pull off an elaborate scheme to corner the orange juice futures market, a move that nets them millions and bankrupts the greedy Duke brothers. The scheme was clever, but it also exposed a real legal loophole, using insider government information to manipulate commodity prices. The film's popularity made the loophole so famous that Congress actually passed a real regulation in 2010 nicknamed the Eddie Murphy Rule. It was part of the Dodd-Frank Act, and it made it illegal to trade commodities based on confidential government reports. Exactly what the Dukes did in the movie. So yeah, a Hollywood comedy literally changed Wall Street law. That's not just Trading Places. That's changing history.
Number 15.
Director John Landis had worked closely with John Belushi on Animal House and The Blues Brothers, two of the biggest comedies of the 1970s. Sadly, Belushi passed away in 1982, just before Trading Places began production. To honor him, Landis included a subtle tribute. In one scene, as Eddie Murphy's character is being escorted through the fancy Winthorpe mansion, you can spot a portrait of a man in a tuxedo that looks suspiciously like Belushi hanging on the wall. It's not confirmed in the credits, but Landis has hinted in interviews that it was his personal nod to his late friend, a way to include Belushi in spirit. That small, quiet Easter egg gives the movie an extra layer of heart, a reminder that even in a comedy about greed and chaos, friendship and loyalty still mattered.
Number 16.
Behind the camera, Dan Aykroyd was every bit as mischievous as he was on screen. During filming, he decided to pull a prank on the 22-year-old Eddie Murphy, who was still new to Hollywood. One morning, Aykroyd showed up on set in full Winthorpe costume, complete with a fake beard and a walking cane, pretending to be a snobbish aristocrat who didn't recognize Murphy. He stayed in character for nearly 10 minutes before finally breaking and shouting, "It's me, Dan!" Murphy cracked up so hard that the shoot had to pause for several minutes. That easy camaraderie between them made their rivalry on screen feel even more natural. Years later, Murphy said that Aykroyd taught him how to handle fame without losing his sense of humor. Because if you can't laugh at yourself, you're trading the wrong kind of currency.
Number 17.
Here's something wild. Trading Places is packed with Christmas trees, snow, and jingle bells. Yet it wasn't even released during Christmas. Yep, Paramount Pictures rolled it out on June 8th, 1983, right in the middle of the summer blockbuster season. Think about that. It was going head-to-head with Return of the Jedi and Superman the Third, two absolute giants that would have crushed most comedies in their path. So why did they take that risk? Simple. The studio saw a gap. While every theater was filled with sci-fi heroes and explosions, there was nothing for adults who wanted sharp, clever humor. So Trading Places became their counterpunch, a brainy, character-driven comedy in a sea of space lasers. And it worked. The film didn't just survive, it thrived. It stayed in the US box office top 10 for 17 straight weeks. That's basically an entire summer of packed audiences laughing their way through Eddie Murphy's first real star performance. In a way, it rewrote the rules. It proved that a smart, satirical comedy could hold its ground against Hollywood's biggest blockbusters and win. And here's the best part. Because of its holiday theme, Trading Places gets double the love every year. Once in June by movie fans, and once every December when people call it one of the best Christmas movies that isn't really a Christmas movie. That's a trade-off anyone would take.
Number 18.
Okay, time for one of the funniest behind-the-scenes slip-ups that nobody caught until years later. Remember Jamie Lee Curtis's character, the clever, street-smart Ophelia, who introduces herself as Inga from Sweden? Well, here's the secret. That accent she used completely fake, and not even Swedish. Jamie Lee later admitted in interviews that she totally improvised the accent on set, and it accidentally came out sounding German. But instead of redoing it, she decided to own it. She threw in a playful "Danke" and just rolled with it, turning a tiny mistake into a running joke that actually fit her character. A woman who's pretending to be someone else to survive. That's what makes it work. Subconsciously, the audience believes Ophelia because she believes in herself, even if her accent makes no sense. And that's the genius of Curtis's performance. It's confident, warm, and totally human. She wasn't playing a stereotype. She was creating a real, flawed, lovable person. It's no wonder that this role shattered her Scream Queen label from Halloween and launched her into a whole new tier of Hollywood stardom. Sometimes the best acting decision is the one you don't plan.
Number 19.
Now here's something most viewers never notice, but once you hear it, you'll never unhear it. Throughout Trading Places, the soundtrack is sprinkled with themes from Mozart's opera, The Marriage of Figaro. At first, it just sounds elegant, classy background music to fit the old money world of the Duke brothers. But if you know your opera history, it's a perfect razor-sharp joke. The Marriage of Figaro is a story about servants outsmarting their masters, the exact same idea that drives Trading Places. So composer Elmer Bernstein wasn't just adding fancy music, he was winking at the audience, using Mozart's melodies as a secret form of storytelling. Every violin cue becomes a reminder that the rich are about to get played by the very people they underestimated. It's musical irony at its finest, and it gives the movie a layer of sophistication that most 80s comedies never even attempted. So next time you watch Trading Places, listen closely. That elegant classical score isn't there for decoration. It's part of the joke.
Number 20.
The final act of Trading Places is pure chaos. Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd pulling off their legendary comeback on the New York Commodities Exchange. But what happened during filming is almost more unbelievable than the movie itself. The production actually shot inside the real trading floor, and that was a problem. See, back then, trading floors weren't like quiet office spaces. They were loud, aggressive, million-dollar madhouses. The second Murphy and Aykroyd stepped onto the floor, real traders lost their minds. They started crowding around, cheering, shouting, and completely ignoring their actual trades. The result? $6 billion in trading was delayed. $6 billion. It got so wild that the exchange had to temporarily shut down live trading, forcing the production team to pack up and reschedule for the weekend when the markets were closed. Eventually, they built a replica trading floor on a soundstage to finish the scene, blending real footage with stage chaos so perfectly that most people can't tell which shots are authentic. That final sequence, with bells ringing, papers flying, and fortunes changing by the second, isn't just a climax. It's a time capsule of what Wall Street used to look like before computers took over. And it's the reason why Trading Places still feels real, even 4 decades later.
Bonus.
Here's the mic drop moment you can end the video with. In 2010, almost 30 years after the film's release, the US government passed a section of the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform Act that was literally inspired by Trading Places. They called it the Eddie Murphy Rule. And yes, it's official. The rule made it illegal to trade commodities using non-public government information, which is exactly what the villainous Duke brothers do in the movie. So, a Hollywood comedy about greed and manipulation didn't just make people laugh, it changed American financial law. Let that sink in. A joke movie from 1983 ended up rewriting the real rulebook on Wall Street. That's how powerful storytelling can be. And there you have it. The wild, unbelievable world behind Trading Places. From billion-dollar shutdowns to musical jokes, from fake accents to real-life laws, this movie didn't just make history, it became history. So, before you go trading places with the next video, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because we've got even more unbelievable movie stories on the way. And remember, whether you're rich, broke, or somewhere in between, you can always bet on a good story.